It's estimated that 1 in 5 pregnancies in the UK end in miscarriage, and over 3,000 babies are stillborn each year. Saying Goodbye offers support for people who have suffered baby loss and was created by Zoe and Andy, a couple who have personally gone through the loss of 5 babies. They now have 2 healthy little girls. Zoe and Andy are holding a free service at Portsmouth Cathedral for anyone who has experienced the loss of a baby, and join us in the studio to tell us more about their charity work. Zoe, Andy, thank you very much for joining us. So obviously it's a fairly difficult way to go about having the desire, the inspiration to create a support group, a charity for people who have gone through similar issues like yourself. If you wouldn't mind, could we start with sort of the time prior to setting up the group and the kind of emotions, times you had to go through, and I can only imagine how difficult it must have been.
Well, we sadly lost, as you said, 5 babies ourselves. Through that time, we realised that there wasn't support out there, and an organisation that was run by people who had actually been through loss themselves. That was very important to us. We were in the corporate world, running international events and marketing and PR for big companies and the government, actually. And so we decided to start a not-for-profit division of the company we ran to offer services around the UK. Well, it started as one service, and quickly we saw that there was going to be a much bigger need than one service. So in the first year we started 7 services. What grew from that was needing support, because we couldn't just offer the services without offering the support to back it up. So we quickly became, I think, probably one of the biggest support organisations in the UK, and got stats off the website, and that surprised us to show us the need that was out there. And today our website has over 650,000 hits every single month, and we support around 50,000 people a week. So the scale of the support that's needed is huge, but the scale of the loss out there is huge. And what we're trying to do is break down the taboo nature of loss and saying this is happening, it's happening to so many people. We need to be talking about it, and we need to be offering the support to those who go through it.
And you've got this event coming up on Saturday at Portsmouth Cathedral. Tell me a little bit about what will be happening there and what will be on offer.
Okay, well, this is actually the 63rd service that we're going to have run in the last 3 years across the UK and also in the US. And the service is very much for everybody. So whether people have lost recently or lost a significant time ago, decades ago, and whether they've lost during pregnancy, at birth or in infancy, everybody is welcome. The service is a time of remembrance, so it's a time for people to be able to come and actually have their baby acknowledged, because for the majority of people, when they lose, especially if they lose before 24 weeks, there's no death certificate given to them, there's no formal funeral or anything held for their child. So for the majority of those people, they've never had that chance to formally say goodbye and actually have their child's life remembered. So the service is a time for people to come along, stand with others who have experienced baby loss, and acknowledge, remember their child. There's music, there's poetry, there's acts of remembrance. And it's a very, very emotional and moving time, but something where people move forward to a place of leaving with hope.
And just on Saturday, when is it running from and to? Is it just sort of be there for
an hour?
An hour?
An hour, yeah. So if the service starts at 11:30, so people tend to arrive half an hour, 40 minutes prior. The service is an hour in length. It contains all the elements that Andy just said, and the hope is at the end of that hour people really do feel that their baby has been acknowledged, their grief has been acknowledged, and that's so important. Sadly, because of the taboo nature of baby loss, often people get stuck in their grief because they don't have an opportunity to process and talk about the pain they've experienced. And what we all want as people is to have our story recognised. And when you lose a child, you want your child recognised. And that's a really important part of the grieving process. And that's one of the things the service does. So if people want to come along, you just come along. You don't need to get in touch beforehand to guarantee a place. And everybody is welcome, the extended family too. Anybody who's been touched by a loss can come along, and you'll be so welcomed by the Saying Goodbye team. And if people want to know more about the service or about the support as a whole, you can go to our website, which can be found at sayinggoodbye.org. And you can find us on Twitter and on Facebook as Saying Goodbye UK, and that answers a lot of questions people might have about loss and also about the support that we offer.
And you mentioned, obviously, when you were experiencing the really tough times, the dark times, there wasn't that support network in place. How important do you feel it has been sort of bringing that opportunity, not just for yourselves, but for other people to tell their stories, to interact with other people who are going through the same style of grief?
It's huge, and I think just seeing the effects it's had across the UK and also in North America. We launch in mainland Europe as well next month. Services start in Paris and etc., rolling out across Europe. And what we see in every country without fail is the same, where people say standing together and finding that support really brings them to a place of wholeness, where there's never closure after the loss of a child. That's not possible. It's something that you carry with you forever. But it's whether you can remember your child with a smile or whether you can remember them with tears. And that's what's really important. And that's what we hope to do as an organisation, is really bring people to that place of hope and a place where they can feel joy again, and that they feel that their life can almost be in a better place because they appreciate everything. And I know for us personally, having lost 5 children, we now feel that those children brought us so much more joy than we can ever have hoped for, because we now remember them with a smile. And that's what we hope to bring to other people, is that ultimate gift where you want every life to make a difference, and you want it to make a positive difference rather than just being stuck in that place of grief.
Yes.
And I had the pleasure of meeting your 2 daughters outside. Going sort of into sort of when you were successful with your pregnancy and you had those, was it sort of a relief as much as, but how did you sort of feel sort of being able to kind of, was it a moving on process? What was that?
Not really, because again, it's something that you carry with you forever. What it does do is it changes loss greatly. I mean, we lost 3 children prior to having our daughter, who's now just 7. And then we lost another 2 children before having our next little girl, who's now 4. And loss definitely changes. People think that losing a baby every time would be exactly the same, but it's not. Every loss you have is completely different and you feel very different. And losing a child prior to having a child to raise with you is very different to losing a child after having a child with you. So the children we lost after having our little girl, those losses were very different to those before. Before, we were very much thinking, would we ever raise a child? Would we ever have a child in our home to raise and to see grow? After, we were very much not only grieving a child we lost, but we were grieving their siblings and thinking, will they ever have a brother or sister to play with? So you're grieving very differently every time, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, completely. And yet there is a relief at that point when you suddenly are successful and you've managed to have a child. There is a huge relief. But if you do lose again after you've had a child, you never expect that's going to happen, because it's almost like, well, it's been successful now. So it's such a shock when it actually suddenly happens again. And sort of really blindsides you.
Absolutely. Once we'd had our little girl, she was born safely, we thought we'd never encounter loss again. We definitely thought that was behind us now. And it really shocked us that we were back in that place again, where the trap door opens and you get told in that scan room that there's no heartbeat yet again. Nothing can prepare you for that. And we certainly weren't in any way mentally prepared to go through it again on any of the times that we went through the loss. But that means we're in a privileged place, actually, where we know what people have gone through, and we can say to people, we know the pain you're going through. And I trained as a counsellor prior to going into the corporate world, weirdly, and just as a hobby, but never intending to use it professionally. And so I'd been trained in how to help people through grief. I'd been trained in how to hold someone's hand going through that bereavement process of losing a child. But nothing could have prepared me for going through it myself. And I thought I knew through all my training what it would be like, but you don't. And that's something I've definitely learned firsthand, that it's something that it's virtually impossible to explain, the pain that you go through and the loss that you feel, and that loss of hope, and how in that split second your life can just shatter. And once you've gone through it, you are perfectly placed to help other people, because when you're going through it, you can't find those words. And what you want to be able to do is stand in front of somebody or sit in front of someone and say, I know you know, and I don't need to find the words. And that's what we do as an organisation. We say to people, we know that pain, we've been through that pain, and you don't need to find the words. We'll just sit with you and we will just support you through it.
And I think definitely with the services, there's a solidarity of people being there who have all gone through, yes, a different experience of baby loss. So for some it's a miscarriage or stillbirth or loss in early years, but there's a common denominator of baby loss. And that standing together actually has a huge moving effect on people, and helping them to actually come to terms with what they've been through.
Because one of the big factors people always say, wherever they lose a baby in the world, is that they feel lonely and they feel isolated. They feel like they're the only person in the world to go through. So I think that's what one of the things the services does, as Andy said, about that solidarity of bringing people together, that they can look around the cathedrals, which is where we always hold them, apart from in London, which is, we use Westminster Central Hall. People look around the cathedrals and they always say, oh my goodness, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person this has happened to. And that has a real impact on people.
Well, thank you both so much for coming in and telling your story, and I'm sure it's an immense gratitude that the network of people who have gone through similar issues to yourself and are brought together tomorrow in Portsmouth, and I wish you all well for the service.
Thank you. Thank you.